This is the Haulin Assets podcast where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody, to the Haulin Assets podcast. I am Craig. He is...
Chris
in
the
studio.
Corner.
Yeah. Chris in the corner. So today, episode 54, we are doing a year in review. Okay, so a year in review, meaning, Chris, you've been on the road for a year.
Over a year. It's crazy to think it's been that long.
Goodness. All right.
Time flies when you're having fun.
We've actually been doing this podcast for a little over a year, right?
Yeah, probably like 15, 16 months now at this point.
And so you've been on the road now for a year, and we're going to be talking about your experience overall, and especially digging into the numbers, how much money you made, how you made that money, and kind of greatest hits from the last year's worth of podcasts and how this all went. So as we get into this, I do want to give a little warning, a little PSA for the people, Chris.
It's always good to warn the people.
Yeah, so this is going to be probably a little bit longer and more involved episode than we normally do. Usually we're, 30, 40 minutes maybe. I suspect that we could go a little bit longer, so hang in there. But there is going to be a lot of good stuff in this one. I think this is going to be a great overview, either a reminder if you've been with us for a while of some of the stuff that Chris has gone through. Repetition is a good thing in this case. We want to learn these lessons over and over again. Or if you're brand new to the podcast, somebody has referred you here or you found us online somewhere, then this is going to be an excellent episode to jump in as your number one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good starting point. And then what we'd kind of recommend after they've listened to it, listen to this episode. If it's your first one, go back and listen to all the episodes kind of in order. That's really how this podcast is meant to be listened to. So you can, learn and hopefully get some really good information out of it. And just start at episode number one after you listen to this one.
Yeah. It's there's kind of a dual purpose with this podcast. The first thing is to teach all the principles that you go through, Chris, and how to read a P&L and how to deal with brokers or whatever the subject may be. But it's also following your journey. It's a whole story of how a trucking company gets started, and so it's really valuable to go through it in order. All right. So, Chris, let's talk about your first year. Where do you want to start with this subject?
It's just been an interesting, exciting year, and a lot of people ask me, well, why the heck is it that you've done this, or what's been the most exciting piece of it? And really, for me, I've been in the trucking industry for 15 years, been helping people start trucking companies for over a decade, and so just actually being able to go out there, experience, and do it, kind of put my money where my mouth is and really make things happen has just been a really exciting experience for me. I've heard over the years from the guys that have said there's no way you can make money as an owner operator, to the guys that say they make money hand over fist as an owner operator. So me actually being able to do it myself and run the business the way that I feel like it should be run, using my decades worth of owning and running multiple businesses, using that experience and actually doing it has just been, it's been a fascinating process. I've learned a ton, and hopefully, really the purpose is to enlighten people and show them the process and then, help them make the decision whether they would want to do that for themselves or not.
Yeah. I mean, with somebody in that situation, an owner operator, their single most valuable skill is going to be the fact that they can drive a truck. But they also need to add on to that all these business skills that you're talking about. It's the same with any other business, right?
Yeah.
A dentist is a dentist, but if he wants to own his own practice, then he's going to need to learn how to run a business. Kind of a similar thing here. So basically, in this first year, you've laid out a blueprint for how this, I don't know, should go, could go. How would you put it?
I would say, for the most part, how it should go. And you can learn from some of the things I've done well. You can learn from some of the mistakes I've made, and hopefully be able to replicate it. And I really truly feel like there is no reason anyone else can't follow that blueprint, that plan, and be as successful as I have. And in fact, I think there's a lot of reasons why most guys should be able to be more successful than I have been. And we'll talk about that throughout some of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, and this is going to be a fun episode. Like I said, it could be a little bit long one, but it's going to be a best of. You've learned a lot of lessons. You've gone through a lot of things in 53 episodes, including the stuff before you ever hit the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
like you said, it's going to be a little bit long, but it's hard to be brief when you're covering a whole year's worth of experiences and things that we've done. We're going to talk a little bit about the startup process, because that's what this podcast series really follows, the whole startup all the way through the first year of operations. And we're continuing to provide new episodes and new experiences and new lessons as time goes on. And, we hope to be able to do that, continue to do that for a long time in the future.
Yeah, indeed. I hope we do. So Chris, tell me a little bit about why you wanted to do this podcast. What brought it to mind for you?
Well, the whole reason is basically because of these experiences I've had over the last little while. I've been helping guys start trucking companies for over a decade. And really in the past, we've just focused on, helping them get their licensing, helping them get a business set up, helping them stay in compliance with the DOT regulations. And I've seen over the years, some guys be very successful at it, and I've seen other guys struggle with it. And typically when I've seen the guys that have struggled, it's because they don't understand the business side. You talk about the term owner operator. I really like that term, and we'll talk a little bit more about it because there are, you're talking about one person with two very different skill sets. You've got the owner who needs to have the skill sets of a business owner, and then you have the operator that needs to have the skill sets of a driver. Well, most guys have a very good skill set with as far as a driver goes, but they don't really have the skill set of an owner. And so I had this idea that I could teach people how to be an owner through this podcast and really show them the things they need to be thinking about and doing as they make good business decisions. We've talked a lot about over the last year, the need to change your mindset from that of a driver to an owner. And that's really a big part of what this podcast is about, is really showing those skills and teaching those skills that you need to be a good business owner.
If we made Haulin Assets t-shirts, that would be one of the t-shirts would be change your mindset, right? This is one of the things you harp on all the time.
All the time, yeah.
The other one would be save your money. Okay, so there are, and you went to one of these, there are schools that people can go to learn how to drive a truck, right? Start the process of learning how to drive.
I didn't have a CDL before I got started, so I had to go through that CDL school.
Which I'm sure would blow some people's minds, starting a trucking company without a CDL. So, but there aren't... there's business schools out there where you can go to learn this other stuff, but there's not like a night school that you can just go pick up all this this business stuff, is there?
No, there's not. Like you said, there's colleges and universities and things like that focus on the business side of things. But in reality, for most guys, that's not going to help out a whole lot because it's very general stuff. Whereas this podcast is so specific to the business practices that you need to understand and use as an owner operator in a trucking company. And so that's really what we're focusing in on. And so I think it's something that anybody can learn how to do. It just takes a little bit of discipline and repetition and just, taking some time to really think through some of these things that we talk about.
Yeah. We really covered a lot of valuable information over the last year. So of this whole process, what's been your favorite part? And you can define favorite however you would like.
That's a really good question. It's all been a lot of fun, but probably the most exciting thing for me, and a lot of this probably has to do with my personality, was really the startup phase. Who doesn't want to go out and buy a $60,000 truck and just kind of...
I'm raising my hand right now.
You're literally raising your hand. Yeah. Who doesn't want to do that? And it's a ton of fun. It's really exciting because you're starting something new. You're kind of fulfilling a dream to a great extent. And it's really probably the part that I enjoyed the most. It's a lot of excitement.
Yeah, it's the honeymoon phase, right?
Absolutely.
You want that excitement. You're out there, and it is exciting to have that brand new experience. And it would make a lot of people debilitatingly nervous, right, to do that. They couldn't function, but some people thrive on that, and that's that mindset that you're talking about. Is can you thrive on that pressure, that that honeymoon phase?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot of pressure, but it's a lot of fun too. But the question is, if we follow the analogy here, Chris, can you build a marriage out of it? Can you make it last? Right. This is like any other major life decision, right? If we're talking about a marriage or starting a business, it's something you're not going into it completely blind, right? You do have some idea of what awaits you, but there's a leap of faith element to it. You can't know everything that's going to happen down the road. so to speak, on a trucking podcast. But it's you have to have grit and determination. You have to have a willingness to learn, a certain degree of humility going into something like this, if you're going to make it last, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good analogy because, just like a honeymoon is, you're kind of stepping off that marriage and you're spending time together, you're focusing on each other, you're really starting to build that foundation. And that's what a honeymoon's all about. And it's the same thing with the startup phase. You're building that foundation so that your company can be successful later on down the road. You're buying the right truck, you're buying the right equipment. Those
you're
decisions,
getting a CDL, Chris.
You're getting a CDL. You're doing all that due diligence, all that important stuff up front that is really going to have a big impact later on down the road. If you buy the wrong truck, it makes it that much harder to be successful in the company. If you buy the wrong van or you don't find the right load matching system, or there's a million things that you can do wrong in that startup phase that's going to make or break you later on down the road. And so it's a really, really fun time because you're making all those decisions, and it's important that you make the right ones.
All right, well, let's talk about that honeymoon phase then for a second, Chris, and this startup phase that you found so exciting. One of the most exciting things is paying for the whole dang thing, right?
Yeah, honeymoons aren't cheap, right? Neither is starting up a company.
How much did it cost you all in to get started on this?
It was $29,893.50. You just laugh.
Spoken like a man who runs his life through spreadsheets. Right, down to the cent how much it cost you. That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say 30 grand because I'm a simple man.
You're rounding up.
I like the simple numbers, Chris. All right, so it cost you about 30 grand to get started. Would you say that that's high, low, average? What can somebody expect?
And we talk about this. We have one episode that talks strictly about the startup cost piece. But I would say it's a little high. There's a lot of costs that I had to incur starting my own trucking company.
Because you were so new to it.
I was so new. I was literally starting from scratch. So most guys, like for instance, I had to buy a bunch of tools for the truck. I had to buy a bunch of stuff like that a lot of guys just aren't going to have to buy. Plus, because I hadn't had no experience in trucking, getting the loan for the truck was harder. I had to put more of a down payment down. Same thing with my down payment on insurance, because as a brand new driver, it was a little bit higher than it probably will be for most people. And a lot of guys are going to jump in from being a leased on owner operator where they already have their truck, and that's huge. That's a big part of the cost. And so mine was high, and we talked a little bit about in that episode where there was, remember, kind of a best case scenario.
Yep. What was that cost on?
It was a little bit closer to $10,000.
Oh, that's a lot lower than 30.
Lower. Yeah. So it's, for most guys, it's going to be somewhere in the middle of that, probably closer to that 10,000. I would guess most guys are going to be somewhere between 10 and 20,000. But the nice thing is on Motor Carrier HQ, on that website, so motorcarrierhq.com, we have a tool that can help guys calculate what they think their startup cost is going to be. It's a startup calculator, super helpful. And so anybody can kind of go in there and use that to estimate what they think it'll cost them to start up.
Okay. All right, great. So let's start talking about when you actually got on the road. Okay. So you paid your 30 grand or, hopefully less if you're somebody else. But you finally got out on the road. What were your favorite experiences, your highlights from your first little bit on the road?
Oh man, that's a good question. That's, thinking back about that, one of the most exciting things that happened was really kind of getting that very first load. It was just awesome. It kind of reminds me of one of my favorite movies, the original Ghostbusters. You remember that one?
The second greatest comedy of all time? Yeah, I remember that one.
The second greatest. So what's the first greatest?
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day? Yeah, okay. Yeah, those are both some pretty good movies. I need to go back and watch those. It's been a while.
Okay, Ghostbusters.
All right. You remember the scene where the secretary answers the phone and she gets the first call out and screams, "We got one!" Yes, all excited. The guy is Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd. What was the other guy's name?
Harold Ramis.
Oh, yeah, him. They were all sitting around the table eating, and then the alarm goes off because she hits the alarm thing, and then just all hell breaks loose. And that's kind of how I felt when Jake let me know that I got my first load. I was prepared.
Were you like Bill Murray? You showed up pretending like you knew what you were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what happened. That makes me laugh. Yeah. Fake it till you make it, right?
Exactly.
So, I had my bags all packed. I was ready to go, but I almost forgot the keys to the truck. I think I'd forgotten how to drive the truck. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of experience at that point anyway, but everything kind of went out of my mind. It was just exciting. It was incredible.
You're like a kid on your first day of school.
Absolutely. Probably more like a kid at Christmas.
So what happened when you got to the shippers?
Oh yeah, that's when things really started to get bad. The euphoria didn't last for too long. When I say they started to get bad, it was just kind of, I was like the Bill Murray trying to pretend like I knew what the heck I was doing. So I'd never even walked into a shipper and say, "Hey, I'm ready to pick up a load." So I've got Jake on my headset, like whispering my ear what to do and what to say, and kind of faking it. And this place required that you had to slide your tandems to the rear, which I had no idea how
Whatever
to do.
That means.
Yeah, you don't know either. But Jake had to walk me through how to do that. And so it was just a comedy of errors. And then icing on the cake, it took them 13 hours to get me loaded, which I still think is my record. Yeah, I don't think I've ever, I don't think I've even had anything more than 7 hours.
Now, is that because at that point you didn't know how to browbeat them into getting your truck loaded?
I guess not. Apparently, I didn't have that one figured out yet.
That's amazing. Was that the trip? Was that your very first trip when you got hit by a deer?
I didn't get hit by a deer.
Yeah.
The deer hit me.
That's
I
right.
didn't hit the deer. Yeah, we got to clarify that.
But it was a different trip?
No, that was the same trip. That was on the way back. So I delivered the first load delivered down into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I picked up another load that was coming back into the Utah area. And on my way back is when the deer decided to be a linebacker and ran right into the side of the truck.
So this is your very first trip, 13-hour load time, linebacker deer.
Yeah.
And I assume it's at this point that the honeymoon phase started to fade just a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And then, icing on the cake a few loads later is when I ran over the can of spray paint and painted the side of my truck orange.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. How much was the repair on the deer again?
It was about $2,000. Oh. Could have been worse. I mean,
And did you get that taken care of right away?
No, it probably took almost a month before we actually finally got it fixed.
Man, that's crazy. So yeah, a bit of a roller coaster ride on that first week on the road, right?
It was an emotional roller coaster, that's for sure. And to be honest with you, I mean, that's kind of one of the things that you have to be prepared for from being day one. And being an owner operator is an emotional roller coaster. You're going to go from one day being super excited because you just had your best month in profits ever. And those profits are all yours and not somebody else's. And, this is a new thing. This is exciting. It's cool. And then, the very next day, the reefer is going to break down in the middle of a run of frozen food. And you're going to have to deal with that. It's just that kind of thing happens. And you have to go into it knowing that you're going to get stressed out and you're probably going to be more stressed than you ever have been in your whole life. And you just have to know that that's part of the game. But it's what you have to do. And if you don't handle stress well and you can't work through it, being an owner operator probably is not for you because there's no way of getting around it. You're going to get stressed.
Well, don't oversell it, Chris.
Well, I'm just trying to paint a true picture here. It's stressful, but like with most good things in life, there's a price you have to pay, and there's a price you have to pay to be successful. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And there are costs to being successful. It costs money. It costs time. It costs a lot of days of stress, and that's just part of it. You really honestly can't get around it.
Well, okay, because I'm the analogy man here, right? Now we've moved past the marriage analogy. First comes marriage, then comes kids, right? And this sounds
baby
like
in the baby carriage, isn't that how it
exactly?
goes?
Yeah, this sounds a lot like having kids. When you say, I am just trying to paint a good picture of it, that reminds me a lot of, I've got a couple of kids, and people will come to me and say, I'm about to have my first kid. What can I expect? And the thing I always come to is, I don't want to paint a false picture. Oh, it's not going to be all sunshine and roses every day. You're going to lose sleep, and it's going to be delightful and cute and all that stuff. And so what I tell them is everything you've ever heard about being a parent is true. All of it, right? So I just imagine in the case of a trucking company, it's kind of a similar thing. Everything you've heard is true. It's stressful, it's rewarding, it's delightful, it's frustrating, it's all of these things. And so you just have to come to the conclusion of whether the potential reward is worth the price that you'll have to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you see both sides of that, just kind of like with raising kids, you hear both sides of it, all of it's true. And the same thing applies a lot into trucking and being an owner operator. You look at, some of the comment boards and websites, including our website and our Facebook page and other ones that deal with this topic. You hear both sides of it. People saying it's the worst thing in the world and other people saying it's the best thing in the world. And both sides, there's some truth to it. It is hard and is difficult. Some people handle that better than others. But there's also good and exciting things that happen. And a lot of it's true. All of it's probably true to a certain extent. And, you just have to always make the decision that's right and best for you.
And so for most people, I don't know, would you say for most people it's going to be a good decision, or would you say that it's, it's going to take a special kind of person to have this right mindset?
I think to a great extent, it does take a special kind of person. I believe anybody can do it, but that doesn't necessarily that means anybody should do it. I mean, it's a very personal decision. And it's one of those things that you have to look at the pros and cons. I've talked about there's a price for it that you have to pay through the financial costs, mental costs, and you have to decide, is that price that you have to pay worth it for you?
Yeah.
And for some people it's going to be, and for others it's not.
And would somebody going into this expect to see, we talk about, yes, there's a lot of stress, but hey, there's a lot of potential upside too, a lot of potential reward to this. How soon does that reward start to kick in? I mean, are you going to see a jump in your lifestyle if you go from an employee driver to an owner operator? Are you immediately going to be like, oh, finally, I can afford that house or whatever?
That's a really good question. And probably what I would say is for most people, starting a trucking company is probably not going to provide an immediate improvement in their lifestyle. It takes some time for that to happen. I'll use myself as an example. So when my dad and I first bought Motor Carrier HQ about 10 years ago, my lifestyle did not see much of a difference for about the first 3 years. I paid myself the same that I was earning before. Luckily we bought a business that was existing. I made some improvements to it in efficiencies. And so I was able to pay myself about the same salary I was paying before, which it wasn't by any means an elaborate. Yeah, no, it was like a very, a meager, I wouldn't say meager, but a livable salary, a livable wage, but it was definitely not flashy or anything like that. I mean, at that point in my life, my wife and I were living in our first fourplex that we'd bought. So instead of buying a house, we bought a fourplex, lived in one unit, rented out the rest. So we were paying rent like anybody else would, but it definitely wasn't as much money as you would pay for a mortgage. So we were saving some money there, and we were living pretty frugally. And during that, that period of about 3 years, I really felt like I was building a solid foundation. And that was really one of my keys to success later on down the road is we weren't taking a lot of money out of the business for that 3 years. In fact, we really weren't taking much at all. And once that was built, I was able to get to the point that I had enough money coming in that I was still able to continue to reinvest some money in the business and keep some money in it to keep it growing. But then at that point, I was also able to start paying myself a little bit more and living a little bit better. And with that being said, I still didn't live an extremely extravagant lifestyle. I still don't. I like to keep a lot of money in my businesses and keep them growing. But as they grow and as that money that you've reinvested starts to do its thing, it makes it easier for you to take money out and still continue that growth pattern.
Yeah. So you got to build a foundation and then reap the rewards later. Yeah. So what you're saying is you practice what you preach, or maybe more accurately for you now on this podcast is you're preaching what you practiced.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I feel like that's exactly what it is. I've always been disciplined with my money, disciplined with my personal finances, so that my personal finances aren't a drain on the business. And over time, it's created this little machine that does a really good job of kind of building wealth and building a good lifestyle and but it's taken time and it's taken discipline. It's taken some sacrifices. It just hasn't happened overnight. Most businesses in trucking certainly like this. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's kind of a general entrepreneur's mindset, but how does that translate then to the specific case of an owner-operator? What lessons do we take out there?
Great question. So with Haulin Assets, as I was driving, for the first year, I paid myself what I considered, I did a bunch of research on driver wages and paid myself what most drivers would earn, which is I paid myself 42 cents a mile. And it doesn't have to be 42 cents a mile. It can be somewhere in that range between 40 and 50 cents. Me being a brand new driver with no experience, I'd probably be lucky to get a 42 cent a mile job. So that's what I paid myself. And I didn't pay myself any more from Haulin Assets for that entire year. I just paid myself that. And I really think that's a key to success for any owner operator when you're starting your own trucking company, is you don't pay yourself any more than what you were earning at your last job. If you can pay yourself less, even better. But if you just pay yourself that driver wage and then the profits and everything else that's left over, you're gonna be building that foundation. You're gonna be saving some money, so you've got a slush fund for when emergencies happen. And then if you want to continue to grow, you're gonna keep saving money that you can put back into the business and use for growth.
Okay. All right. So let's shift gears here a little bit, Chris. Damn, I keep using these trucking analogies accidentally. Okay.
They're so good, though.
I know. What else do we get from trucking that I have no idea about? Okay. But I want to talk about this idea that we've skirted around a little bit, the cost-benefit analysis, that yes, everything you've heard is true and that it's all stressful and all that stuff, but there's a lot of reward that comes along with it also. Tell me a little bit about the rewards, the possible benefits that we can see or that you have seen from starting your own trucking company.
So when I think about that, I think for me anyway, there are three really big rewards. One is freedom, two, pride of ownership, and three, just plain the understanding that I'm setting myself up for financial success. I'm setting myself up for something bigger and greater later on down the road. I get a lot of joy and self-satisfaction, know that I'm building that foundation, building something.
Yeah, I can understand that. So, but the first thing, I want to dive into these individually a little bit. You said freedom, which seems self-explanatory, but tell me what you mean when you say that it gives you more freedom.
I want to be a king of analogies now. So I'm gonna compare this to home ownership, which I think is something that people can relate a little bit better to. They understand. Most people either have owned a home or have been around it enough that they understand what home ownership kind of means.
Yeah, I mean, I own a home, and so when I went from a renter to a homeowner, I guess, okay, so I'm following your analogy here. I felt a little bit, you feel a little bit trapped in that, oh gosh, I'm responsible for this whole thing, and I've got to make sure that this house doesn't fall apart, the yard's got to be okay, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, I can do whatever I want with this. This house is mine.
Yeah, it's kind of part of, when people talk about the American dream, typically home ownership is a big piece of that. And really for a lot of different reasons, I think freedom is a big part of that. When you think about the United States, freedom is really what the United States was built on. It's kind of the foundation, I think, for most of us that live here, whether your lineage goes back centuries or you immigrated into the U.S., people come here because of the freedom and the opportunities that it provides. We really value that whole freedom thing. And when you own your own home...
Now I want that on a t-shirt. We really value that whole freedom thing. Okay, sorry, go on.
Now you've made me lose my train of thought. Going back to the whole freedom thing, this is the same thing with home ownership versus renting. When you own your own home, you have a lot of freedom that you don't when you rent. You can paint the walls any color you want. Pink for you, right, Craig?
Correct.
And you can have pets. You can tear out the lawn and plant a garden if you want to. You don't have to go and ask somebody, and you can just go out and do it. You have that freedom that you just don't if you rent. And I think it's a lot the same thing as being an owner operator. You get to choose where you go. You get to choose what kind of truck you want to drive, where you want to fuel, what routes you want to take. You just have a whole lot of freedom as an owner operator that you don't as an employee driver. And, for me, when I was, my main objective as an owner operator was to make a lot of money. So I typically ran as hard as I possibly could while I was out on the road. Then when I got home, I'd take some time off and just, kind of kept repeating that cycle. If you have a little bit different idea of what freedom is and what you want out of your business, you can tweak that and you can change that. Maybe you want to go visit different places and do your 34-hour resets and in other parts of the country. I mean, you have that freedom to do things the way that you want when you are an owner-operator.
With all that being said, we have this freedom within reason, right? Within a certain framework, which is kind of, again, the point of this podcast is to provide a framework for someone to build a trucking company around, right? So it's not, oh, you're free to do whatever you want and just expect to make money, right? You still have to be disciplined within that, within reason.
Within reason, absolutely. It is a business and you have to be able to make money at it, but you've got some latitude. As long as you're making good, sound business decisions overall, you're going to have some latitude about how you go about doing that. And, that's a very big possibility as an owner operator.
Yeah. Now, the second thing you said, the second benefit that you've seen, you said pride of ownership. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I'm not sure everyone feels as strongly as I do about this, but I really like the feeling of knowing I own something and that it's mine and that no one can take it away from me.
You're like Gollum.
Yeah.
This company is your precious.
It is my precious, yep. Owning something, whether it's a piece of property or a business, is just, it's very satisfying. Maybe it's kind of cheesy, but when I have friends over, I like knowing that I'm entertaining them at my own home. So I guess you could say I'm a prideful person.
Well, Chris, let me give you a 45-second diversion, okay? Because I'm a fluent French speaker, and any other French speakers out there will know that there are two different words for pride. And one of them is the pride that makes you a jerk, and one of them is the pride that you have, like when your kid performs well at the piano recital or something like that.
So which one am I?
The second one.
Okay,
that's fine.
Good.
That's
I'm not
fine.
the jerk.
La fierté, Chris. You're good. You're fine.
All right, sweet. That makes me feel better.
And really, either way, I mean, I only keep you around to make me look less prideful by comparison.
I'm glad I'm good for something. So my businesses are kind of that same way. I feel a huge sense of accomplishment, of that good pride. And just knowing that what I'm doing is benefiting my company and not somebody else's company.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It's the same thing with renting and home ownership, right? It's either way, you're paying something every month, but in one case, you're paying everything to somebody else. And in another case, you're building your own wealth, right?
Yeah.
So, and I find it interesting, if we go to the last reward that you mentioned, you said it's the understanding that you were, setting yourself up for big financial success, right? It's that laying that foundation that you were talking about. And you didn't say, what you didn't say is that you have achieved financial success, which I found interesting because the first year went pretty well, right? You made some money.
It did.
So how come you're talking about a foundation instead of the money that you made?
Because I really feel like this is kind of where I want to emphasize again that this is not a get rich quick scheme. I didn't pull any of that money out. So, in my day-to-day living, it didn't feel like I made much of a difference in my ability to spend more money. It was kind of the same, but I was setting up that foundation so that I'll be able to have those benefits later on down the road. One of the things that somebody told me a long time ago is that if you want to be successful, one of the things that you have to live by is let's see if I can remember this right. You need to be willing to make the sacrifices most people won't so that you can live like most people can't. And that's really what this boils down to is I'm making the sacrifices now. I'm keeping that money in the business to make a good, strong foundation so that later on down the road, that business will be strong and will be able to make me the kind of money that will give me the kind of lifestyle and the kind of opportunity that most people just will never have because they aren't willing to make those sacrifices early on. They aren't willing to put up with that stress and the headaches and all those things that kind of come along with that ownership, especially that first year of business. It's tough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And okay, so you mentioned, speaking of building a foundation, that the first year is all about a few of those things. Tell me a little bit about what those are, how to build that foundation.
Well, that first year, you're establishing yourself. So your main goals really, I look at it as three things: building a savings, developing relationships, and developing a system.
Oh, hang on, Chris. Can you hear that? That's the sound of a future episode in the making.
I think that will be a good episode in the future. We'll have to keep that one in mind. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a good one. Okay, so let's talk numbers then. Okay,
yeah,
this is the
my
part
favorite
that
part.
Everybody's been waiting for. I've been waiting for is let's talk numbers, how things went in the first year, and I will mention. I believe that this will all be on in the full show notes.
It will
right?
be. So you can go to the full show notes, look up episode 54. I'm going to have a consolidated profit and loss statement and a balance sheet for that whole first year, and you'll be able to see all these numbers and more. All my total fuel expenses, my maintenance expenses, just everything in pure detail right there for everybody to see.
Yeah, so there should be a link to the full show notes in, whatever you're listening to this on, whether it's in iTunes or Spotify or whatever. There should be a link there. But if not, if you don't see that, go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com and follow along, because hearing the numbers is one thing, but if you can hear them and see them at the same time, it's even more impactful. So I would encourage everybody to do that. Okay, Chris, now that that's out of the way, let's talk numbers. Where are we at?
Well, so for the first year, I ran a total of 109,636 miles.
That's a lot of miles.
That is a lot of miles.
How many? That's 30-ish trips across the U.S.?
Yeah, at least. Yeah, it was a lot of driving, that's for sure.
That's pretty good. So would you say that's kind of normal, what somebody could expect?
I would say that's probably actually a little bit on the low end. Because you remember, right, I had to take a lot of time off in that first year, 4 weeks because of my guard duty. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on down the road because of just kind of the financial impact that had. But 4 weeks off because of National Guard duty, 3 weeks off because of the blown engine, and then there was another couple weeks here and there on top of that. So they had a big impact. So in reality, you should be able to do between $125,000 and $150,000 or miles in a year.
Well, speaking of dollars, then the number that we're all, kind of drum roll waiting to hear. How much money did you make this year?
So the total revenue coming in was a little over $200,000, $202,405.
Okay, not bad. I mean, it sounds not bad to me, at least, as far as revenue. But revenue is not the only number that we care about because we have to talk about...
It's not the most important number.
Right.
But it's an important number, but definitely not the most important.
But then tell me about, what does that make your rate per mile?
So the rate per mile was $1.84 a mile.
And how much, because this is where we get into the important stuff. The cost per mile was what?
$1.55.
Which is less than your rate per mile, which means you made money.
It is.
Right.
Yep.
It is. Maybe I'm oversimplifying, but it seems like that's it, right?
That's a little bit of a simplification, but ultimately, yeah, that's right.
Okay, very good. So what do you like about these numbers? What do you find encouraging? Let's start with the positive this time, Chris. What do you find encouraging about these numbers?
Let's talk about the cost per mile. When I originally calculated my cost per mile, and just as a reminder, you can go to motorcarrierhq.com, and there is a tool that will help you calculate your estimated cost per mile. My original estimate was $1.53.
And you said it was 155 in the end?
It was 155 is what it was spread out over that first year.
So that's pretty close.
I was surprised how close it was. Yeah. And in episode 20 is when we talk more about the cost per mile and the different things that are in it. But if you also remember at that point, when we had that episode 20, I had about 3 months worth of data, and I calculated my cost per mile during that first 3 months as $1.67. So it's kind of nice to see that over time, I've been able to whittle that down a little bit. And if I would have been able to run harder that first year, if I would have gotten closer to that 150,000 miles, my cost per mile would have been even lower because those fixed costs, and we talk about that in episode 20, the difference between fixed cost and variable cost, those fixed costs would have been spread out over more miles. And so my overall cost per mile would have been even lower.
Wow. Okay. So anything else you want to pull out of that?
Let's talk a little bit about my all-in rate, because I kind of have mixed feelings about that. You have to remember
your all-in rate per mile being what, 187?
184, wasn't it?
184. Yeah, 184. Okay.
So that 184, I have some mixed feelings about. Overall, I'm happy with it because you have to remember this is your first year, especially those first 90 days. It's really hard to find brokers that will allow you to haul loads for them. Once you hit the year mark, just about any broker will let you haul for them. So That limits you, so it makes it so you're usually not getting the top paying loads and all that kind of thing. So $1.84, obviously it was good enough to make money, but I really over time want to work that up to closer to $2 a mile. You can make $2 a mile. I mean, that's when you really start getting excited, as an owner operator. If you can manage those expenses and keep them down lower in that, that $1.60 range, and then you can make $2 a mile, you're getting into that territory of six-figure income as an owner operator.
Not bad.
Not just total revenue, but what you actually can bring home to your house and pay your rent with.
And somebody who is not starting out the same way you did, somebody who's been driving for a while already, are they going to have a head start? Or is it's not dependent on how long you've been driving, it's dependent on how long the company has been in business? There's
both factors. There are some benefits that you'll get if you've been driving for a long time. Your insurance is going to be cheaper. There's some benefits there, but for the most part, it's the company.
Yeah.
So that's going to affect your insurance as well. That's going to affect what brokers will let you haul for them, how good of rates you're going to be able to get from brokers. It just gives you some more negotiating power.
Nice. Okay. And then there is, of course, the most important number, lest we forget. We've talked about revenue, $202,000 and change. What was your actual profit for the business?
So the profit was $32,204.76.
And that's after paying yourself, right?
That's after paying myself as a driver. Yeah. So that's the profit that's left over.
Not bad. So $32,000. That's a few Happy Meals on the road, or a peanut M&Ms for you.
That's a few packages of peanut M&Ms. Yeah, absolutely.
Very nice.
Make my belly happy.
So you made a profit, Chris.
We made a profit. That's the exciting part. Even though it's the toughest time, the toughest year is typically the first year, we were still able to turn a profit, which a lot of brand new companies aren't able to do. So that's exciting.
Yeah, very good. So anything else you want to talk about with these numbers?
I just kind of want to remind everyone that the profit and loss statement and the balance sheet are going to be included in the show notes as you talked about. So I'd highly encourage everyone to go check those out at haulinassetsllc.com so that you can kind of see the details regarding the revenues and expenses. It's super educational, especially if you're thinking about doing that. You can kind of use some of my numbers that we're talking about here, and you can plug those and make tweaks into the startup cost calculator, into the rate per mile calculator that we've got on motorcarrierhq.com website, and it'll help you kind of hone in and get an idea of what it might cost you to do your own business.
All right, final numbers thoughts then, Chris.
Just one more really quick thing. If you've been following the monthly profit and loss statements that I've been giving, this one's a little bit different, and that's because it's consolidated. But if you go down to the bottom, you'll see that there is the net income, and then there's another section that's titled other expenses that's usually not there. And
you mean on the monthly ones?
On the monthly ones, yeah. Okay. So it's on this one, but not normally on the monthly ones. And that's because that includes the depreciation expense for my truck and trailer. So the cool thing about a depreciation expense is it's really not cash that's coming out of your pocket. It's purely a tax benefit. The simplified version is that because of the depreciation expense, even though I made over a little over $32,000, the IRS is only going to tax me on $17,992 of that. And that's really one of the beauties of owning a business is you get that tax benefit and a lot of other tax benefits that you don't get as a company driver. So even though you may be making more money to the IRS, it doesn't appear so much, and you're not paying quite as much in taxes.
Oh, sorry. Are you done talking about taxes yet? I passed out a little bit there.
That was a good snort.
You said taxes, and I just
you immediately tuned out.
Okay, so no, I'm kidding. Yeah, taxes. This is the important stuff. Honestly, it's the stuff that I find incredibly boring. But just because you find it boring doesn't mean it's not important, and doesn't mean it can't help you be successful in your business to know that stuff.
Yeah, I'll put up with a little bit of boring if it means I can save some money.
There you go. Yeah. That's one way to think of it. Okay, so I've got a question for you. We have got two groups that tend to listen to this podcast, and we know this from the comments. Thank you for the comments. Thank you. Keep them coming. And the reviews on iTunes and elsewhere. Now, the two groups, we've got guys who want to be owner-operators and guys who want to eventually grow their business into a fleet, right? So the ones that just kind of want the freedom out on the road, I want my own thing, want to do my own thing. And then the others who say, you know what, I do want to make a really pretty penny at this and build a larger organization. So how is this first year going to be different for those two types of groups, or will it?
I actually think it will be different for those two groups. Not the first year is not different. The first year for those two groups really needs to be about the same. But after that first year, you're going to see things change a little bit. You're going to kind of see those two groups go down two different paths.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So first year, take the first 50 episodes of Haulin Assets as your Bible.
Yeah.
And then after that, you say it kind of separates a little bit. Elaborate on that for me.
So as an owner-operator, really all you need to do after that first year, or during that first year, is you're just trying to build up that savings cushion, and it's kind of your emergency fund in case something happens. Once you've got a good savings built up, so when I say a good savings, I think you should have at least 1 or 2 months worth of operating costs in the business. So if your normal monthly expenses are $15,000, then you should have at least $15,000 of savings just sitting there, just as a just in case. Even better would be 2 months, so $30,000 worth of that savings. Once you've got that built up as an owner operator, then you can really start taking out the profits and using the profits in your personal life and doing with them whatever it is that you want to do with your profits.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
And for some people, using those profits may be just about increasing their own lifestyle, but for others, it might be about reinvesting and building the business and hiring drivers and building up a fleet, right?
Yep. So if you're that owner operator and you've got you've got the savings built up, then you can go buy that nice new fancy truck. You can spend that money however you want. If you want to build it into a fleet and you want to add more trucks, you're going to take that extra profit once you've got that savings built up and you're going to reinvest it. You're going to go buy another truck. You're going to go buy another trailer. You're going to maybe buy a new truck instead of having the older used ones. There's different ways that you can spend that money to help your fleet grow. But that's what you're going to use most of that profit for at that point, is just to help you grow.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we promised the people a long episode, and doggone it, have we delivered?
We've accomplished.
Let's start the process of wrapping this up a little bit, and I want to go back and summarize a little bit of what you've talked about. Essentially, your first year on the road, if I'm hearing it right, it's all been just about building up that foundation. And it's great that you made money, but even if you hadn't made money, even if the business had lost a little bit of money, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a disaster. And you can still be laying that foundation and building the habits, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can lose a little bit of money that first year. Obviously, that's not ideal, but as long as you're getting that foundation set up and you're going to be able to use that as a launching point for bigger and better things down the road, you're still ahead of the game.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you a really blunt question here. Sorry if it's a little bit too blunt, but is it worth it? Has it been worth it for you? You talked about the stress. You talked about the financial rewards. You're not paying yourself an exorbitant amount of money out of this or anything. So in your mind, is it worth it?
That's a really good, that's like a soul searching, deep question.
That's what I do, Chris.
I guess that's why you're the interviewer and I'm not. But if I had to take an honest look at it and look at all the difficulties and everything I've been through and kind of where the company is right now versus where it was a year ago, I'd say yes. I mean, we made money, which a lot of companies are not able to say and do their first year. And like I said earlier, there's a price to success. I haven't yet achieved the success that I hope to be able to achieve at some point, but I feel like I've really started to pay that price. I've invested money. I've invested a lot of time. It's been super stressful at times. And I'm sure I'm going to have to keep kind of paying some of those costs, but usually that first year is the hardest. And I feel like we're really in good shape. I feel like we've got that good foundation set up so that we can catapult and have an even better second year, and our level of success will just kind of continue to grow and grow.
So this whole episode has kind of been one long advice session, right? It's been recapping your experience, but also talking about advice. But I wanted to ask you that specifically, if you had one piece of advice to impart here at the end for somebody looking to get started on this, what would it be?
Well, if they haven't already, I'd encourage somebody to go back and listen to every episode of the podcast that we've launched so far. We've just had one of our fans leave a message saying that he discovered us and listened to all the episodes in like 2 or 3 days.
Oh, no way. Really?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Please don't do that. That's just way too much, Craig and Chris.
My voice is okay, but listen to your voice for that long, that might wear on the ears, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I am to be consumed in small doses.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of where I would start. And then I kind of, listen to the challenges that I've talked about, that I've gone through, use the startup calculator on Motor Carrier HQ to figure out how much money that you'd have to put out to start the business. And then really think about your situation and what the benefits of being an owner operator would be for you, what's important to you. And you just kind of use that cost benefit analysis for yourself. Take all the challenges, take all the benefits, and honestly ask yourself if you're willing to pay that price for the benefits that you think you'll receive. And, I've said this time and time again, deciding to jumping into being an owner operator is a very personal decision. And it's not the right decision for everybody. It kind of takes that special breed, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. But I feel like I've created this roadmap. I've given you a total insight into everything that I've been through, those challenges, the ups, the downs. And if you listen to all the episodes of the podcast, you're going to hear all that. You're going to see all that. And, if that sounds like something that is the right decision for you, then go for it.
Yeah. And I mean, your numbers are encouraging, but you've said in the past, I think you even said today, that it's possible that somebody else could be even more successful than you were in their first year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think most guys should be able to, because they aren't going to face some of the big challenges that I have. One, learning how to drive a truck.
There is that.
I when I showed up and picked up that first load, I had never driven a truck with a load on it before. So that was the first time. Yeah. And
wow.
I'd gone through CDL school, but you're always hauling an empty trailer around. So actually driving with a load on, that was the very first time I'd done it. I like I said before, I didn't know how to slide my tandems when I showed up at the first place. Those are challenges that other guys just aren't going to have to deal with.
Right. So what other challenges do you think you ran into that other people might not have to deal with?
Well, I think probably the biggest challenge, especially the one that had the greatest impact on the finances, was the fact that I had to park the truck a lot because of my National Guard service. One, every time I had a drill on a weekend, I'd have to be back. So that often interrupted trips and made trips shorter than they would have been otherwise. Or
made you take a load that you might not have otherwise.
Exactly, because I had to take a lower paying load to get back in time for drill. And then also just kind of because of the way my drill schedule worked in that 12-month period, I actually had to do 2 of my annual trainings. So I had the truck parked for a total of 4 weeks, 2 weeks each time at 2 different points in that 12 months. And that had a really big impact.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost 10% of your year, right? If we're talking 4 out of 52 weeks, that's a big percentage.
Yep. And that's on top of the 10 days that I had it parked while I was on vacation, and another 3 weeks while it was parked while the engine was getting worked on. And that was during the most profitable time of the year. That engine rebuild happened the end of November through the beginning of December. And, just to kind of give an idea using some back of the napkin math, if you take the 4 weeks of my guard duty out and then 3 weeks while the truck was having the engine repaired, and the first week of April last year, because I didn't take my first load until the second week of April, I really only ran 44 weeks during that first 12 months. So if you kind of divide my total revenue of $202,000, that averaged out to be about $4,600 a week. So if you multiply that by 4, the 4 weeks I missed from drill, I missed out, or because of my annual training, I missed out on over $18,000 of revenue because of those 4 weeks.
So it would have been more like $220,000 for that first year.
At least. Just
potentially.
Just with those 4 weeks. And if you kind of remember back to my episode 20 on that cost per mile, when we were talking about that, my fixed cost per mile came in at 48 cents a mile. And those costs for that year were really already covered. So that 18,000 miles would have been super profitable. And I kind of estimate that would have been about another $7,000 in profit out of that $18,000. So that definitely had a big impact onto that bottom line.
Yeah, no kidding. So, Chris, looking forward into the future, what's coming up next for you then for Haulin Assets?
Well, I plan on continuing to share the experience, keeping the business going, improving what I've been doing, and just making the business better and stronger, and really continuing to give insight to people that are either doing this already or thinking about doing it, and just hopefully, continuing to teach some good business principles and helping people be more successful in their journey.
Very good. So let's finally kind of wrap this up. We're actually hitting that hour mark now. So this is by far the longest episode we've ever done. But wrap it up for me then. If you wanted to just give one final parting thought, what would it be for the first year in business?
It's been a good year. It's been a challenging year, but we've made money. And I really feel like, the whole reason of doing this is to help guys that think they may want to go down this journey. And I really feel like I said before, I think I've built a pretty good blueprint that people can follow, a pretty good map to show them good things to do. And I don't think there's any reason if somebody wants to do that, they can't follow that map and do the same thing for themselves. And have at least as good a success as I did, and potentially even better success because of some of those challenges that we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope everybody who has listened up to this point, if you've made it an hour into this episode, hopefully you got something out of this episode. But if you've been listening to us for a while, I hope that you have enjoyed the first year of Chris's experience and that you've learned something from that. If so, again, please leave us those reviews, leave us the comments. We do love hearing from you, and any ideas of stuff that you would like us to cover in the future. We want to hear all of that. So thank you so much for being with us for this first year. And if you're just joining us for the first time, then again, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to some of those older episodes from the beginning and enjoy that journey yourself. Now we're going to finish this episode. This is done. Okay. It's done. But if you look down at the little timer on your podcast thing, you'll see there's a few extra minutes because we're going to run through just a few, make fun of Chris moments. Some of the stuff, the funny stories from
my
Chris's
rookie
first
mistakes.
Yeah, your rookie mistakes from the first year. So if you care to hang around for that, then we'll do that here after the music. But again, thanks everybody for listening. HaulinAssetsLLC.com is where you can go for full show notes. You can also visit motorcarrierhq.com to see some of the tools that Chris has talked about on this episode and others. So we hope to see you in both of those places. And unless you stick around for a few more minutes of Chris being an idiot, then we'll see you next time.
Hey, and if you're going to stick around and listen to this Chris being an idiot piece, and you get a good little laugh or two out of this as payment, go and give me a good a rating on iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast. Rate the podcast. Tell us what you think. I love reading those.
All right. Thanks, everybody. All right, Chris, it wasn't just sunshine and roses, was it?
No, I did some stupid things.
I'm trying to decide right now if I want to start with what was the stupidest thing you did, or maybe we work up to that.
I don't know. I'm speechless. I can't even say there were some dumb things.
How about what were some of your favorite good experiences? Okay, we're going to start with that, and then we'll work into the making fun of Chris portion of the episode.
Just overall being able to see so much of the country was probably my favorite thing about driving a truck.
Favorite state or region to drive through?
I like driving through probably two of them. Going up into Montana was beautiful,
up
and
I-15.
Amazing. Partially up I-15, and then up, I think I want to say 287 or 191, going up kind of north of West Yellowstone. Just absolutely beautiful.
Past the like Rexburg and
well, even way higher than that. Yeah,
sure.
Going up into just kind of the west side of Yellowstone.
Okay, very nice.
So that was pretty, and then the Smokies in the east, the southeast were absolutely beautiful as well. Smoky Mountains.
Very nice. Okay, so anything else? Any other good experiences you want to talk about? I'm just really eager to get to the making fun of you part. So talk about whatever good stuff you want. Let's get it over with.
Let's just dive right into the rookie mistake. Start making fun of Chris. Rip the Band-Aid off.
All right. So you mentioned not knowing how to slide your tandems. I don't know if I should be embarrassed, but I have no idea what that means.
Well, the trailer, it's got the set of wheels right on the trailer. You can slide those all the way to the back of the trailer or about not maybe a third of the way towards the front. So you've got all this latitude, and you kind of use that to adjust your weight. And then when you're typically at a dock unloading or loading, you want them slid all the way to the back, so when the forklift drives onto the trailer, it's not bouncing up and down quite as bad, and it's a little bit easier on the trailer and the forklifts.
And you did not know how to do this.
I did not know how to do it when I showed up.
And I recall something about you had some adventures in backing in your first few times out, right?
Yeah, well, it probably lasted more than just the first few times. Yeah, making a fool of myself trying to back into some really tight docks. Or what was oftentimes even worse was when you were at truck stops trying to back in, because they're really tight and there's like 50 million people watching you do it. And there's guys waiting to like travel through a certain area, and you're trying to back in, and it's that, talk about pressure.
Yeah. And embarrassment.
Crazy. And embarrassment. But there's so many nice people out there. When people typically see you struggling backing in, they come out and they watch for you, they help you, they give you pointers. And so that was always really cool to see people helping each other out. That's awesome.
All right. So what else did you do?
I overfilled my tanks. Remember, there was one time where I had a really heavy load, and I couldn't fill my tanks all the way up. Well, I'd probably been traveling for at least 2 days and had fueled 2 times and done everything right. And then the last time I have to fuel, I'm just not even thinking. I'm just filling the truck up. And the next thing I know, I realize after I've fueled the truck, I filled it all the way up, my drives are overweight. And so I ended up, luckily it was in Utah. I had my dad come out and meet me at a truck stop, and we siphoned like 40 or 50 gallons of fuel out of the truck.
Into like the little 5-gallon tanks?
Into little 5-gallon, yeah.
That's too funny.
Fuel cans. Yeah.
Let's see. I recall you had to chain your tires at one point going through Oregon. And how did that go? Was there anything embarrassing there?
Luckily, not really anything too embarrassing, other than it took me a lot longer than it should have, because that was the first time I'd watched YouTube videos. Luckily, I'd watched some YouTube videos, so I had a general idea of how to do it. And I'm a fairly mechanically inclined person, so I was able to get them on. They worked really well. Other than I'd put the bands on that kind of keep them tight. I'd put those on backwards, but it didn't hurt anything. So
would you say that your speeding ticket was a rookie mistake, or was that just a mistake?
It was a little bit of a rookie mistake, because it was in a really stupid spot. It's kind of in one of those areas where you're going in and out of towns, and they caught me right as the speed limit went from like 55 to 45. And I just plain wasn't paying enough attention and wasn't slowing down fast enough, and got pulled over.
Do cops, are they quicker to bust a big rig for something like that?
Well, this guy was, because he was a lot of states have guys that are specifically out there to target big rigs. The guys that can do the safety inspections and everything like that. So he was a commercial motor vehicle specific police officer.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was looking for a guy like me.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah,
I guess I'm just thinking of it from the perspective of a cop. If you're enforcing the speed limits in those towns where you're going in and out of the towns, like your stop distance is a lot bigger than my Mazda's, right?
Yeah, it is.
At whatever speed. So
and there's some reason behind that. I mean, those trucks don't stop on a dime, so you got to be careful with your speed. But yeah, he didn't give me any favors, that's for sure.
Yeah. What other rookie mistakes you got for us?
I ended up going through a trailer tire a lot faster than I should have, because I had one blow and I didn't know any better. And the guy that replaced the tire put a mismatched tire tread on it. So one of the tires was, like an inch wider, because the tread hadn't been worn down so much, and it just beat the heck out of that tire.
Really?
So yeah, it wore the tire out in like a month.
Well, I guess when I say really, I'm thinking the shop did that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It was pretty bad.
Maybe not the best shop.
No.
Okay. Anything else, Chris? Shall we wrap it up?
That's kind of all of them. Luckily, none of them were too bad. No accidents, none of the big things. So it didn't cost me a huge amount of money, but lessons learned nonetheless.
I suppose so. I mean, I guess I could make a little bit of fun of you, but I don't feel like I've got enough ammo. So I'll be watching for year 2 to see.
I'm sure there will probably be more.
All right, cool. All right, Chris, I'll see you next week then.
See you later.